No backsplash? Backsplash. If only it was this easy in real life. Hi, I'm back with another project. If you're new here, my name's Marcel, but if you have seen any of my videos, you might have watched the one where I gutted our kitchen and made it look all nice and new, but I never got around to installing a backsplash. Well, that time has finally come. I gotta say I'm pumped about this one because I've never done any tile work before. I would love to be installing some tiles from Fireclay because I love their stuff, but I'm trying to keep this on the lower end of the budget, so I found a dupe from Floor & Decor with a pretty similar vibe at half the price, so that's what I'm gonna go with. My plan is to tile the entire wall on the sink side and go under the upper cabinets on the other wall, so we'll see how it goes. I already cleared everything out, measured the square footage, and bought more than enough tiles than I think I need in case I mess up anything on the cuts. So before I talk too much, let's get to it.
Project?
The first thing I had to do was mark a level line beyond the countertop. I cut and attached a scrap piece of wood to the wall so the tile had something to sit on. From there I started measuring the exact dimensions of all those little details like the outlet and the window frame so I could get the right cuts for that first row of tiles. Then it was time to start cutting. I rented a wet saw for a couple days, which worked out perfect so that way I didn't have to spend all that money on buying one. It literally cut like butter. After that I mixed up the mortar. You want to get this to a peanut butter consistency, not too wet but not too dry. Then I started applying a thin layer with my trowel. You definitely want to keep it thin and not too gloppy to avoid a mess. Just make sure you're getting the right size trowel for whatever you're working with. And then it was just putting in all those tiles. There were some specific cuts here, so it was a lot of math, but I was able to do them all with the wet saw. I used these little 1/8 inch spacers to keep the lines as clean as I could. There's a lot of grout lines, so I used a lot. And then on to the second row. I used a different grout float to press the tile evenly into the mortar, and that was really helpful. From there I did the same steps I did before to finish that second row. Okay, so plans have changed a little bit. As the tiles are going higher and higher, there's a gap on one side that's getting bigger and bigger since the wall isn't straight. It's too small to cut a sliver of tile, but I'm getting nervous that the gap will be too big to caulk, so I don't think I'm gonna go to the ceiling.
What?
If I was a pro, I'd know how to fix this, but I'm definitely not, so I'm gonna err on the side of caution to keep it from not looking good. Before I even started this project, we were debating how high to go up the walls, so since the walls aren't square, it's making the decision for me. Once the height was figured out, I started in on the third row. I cut and installed this tile trim piece where the final row was going to end for a nice finish. I didn't want to go too high, so I ended up cutting a tile in half instead of installing the whole piece. Then I moved on to the other side to do the same thing. Once the upper part was finished, I removed that piece of wood from earlier and brought the tile down to the baseboard. I used painter's tape to help avoid any tiles from slipping as I was going down. I took a flathead screwdriver and removed any mortar that was seeping through the grout lines before it fully cured. You want those lines to be super clean so that way your grout can really get in there. Then it was a quick wipe down with a slightly damp sponge to clean up the tiles to get them ready for the next step. I gotta say I really like where the height of the tile is on that wall. It's definitely different from what I planned on doing, but I think it's better. Anyway, I just went and picked up a bag of unsanded grout. Since the terrazzo is so busy on the floor, I want to keep the walls kind of neutral, so I went with an eggshell white grout, so that way it just kind of blends in with the tile. I think if I went with a darker grout, it would just be too much between the walls and the floor, so I think this is the right move. Whoa. Now that I got the goods, I'm going to head back home and get to mixing. Same kind of vibe for the grout as the mortar. You don't want it to be too wet or too dry. One thing is you just got to mix it really well to get the pigment right. The key to getting your grout perfect is applying it at a 45-degree angle, both with the application but also the grout flow. I worked in small sections to avoid getting a haze on the tile, so you want to keep an eye on when it's dry so you can wipe it off. Then I just kept applying it bit by bit and wiping it off with a clean damp sponge. I gave it a good once over with a dry terry cloth rag at the end to remove any dust I might have missed. Morning. I gave the grout a good 24 hours to dry, so now I'm going to waterproof everything so it'll be nice and protected from any water or any other splatters. A little of this goes a long way, so I put about 4 ounces in an old yogurt container and went to town. I applied it with a small foam brush on all the grout lines and used a towel to catch the drips. This stuff dries within 3 to 5 minutes and needs to be wiped off, so I worked in small sections again. I actually made a video a while ago about how to waterproof tile grout, so I'll link that in the description box if you want to check it out. I gave that a good day to dry, and then I went in with a caulk to finish it off. I wanted the lines to be pristine, so I taped them off and removed them as I went to avoid the caulk drying and getting messy. This really makes everything look legit. Just make sure you're using a waterproof caulk that's made to be used in the kitchen. It looks so good once that tape was off. All right, the big wall is done, but I still have one more to do. My back and hands are definitely feeling it, so I'm just gonna power through and get this little project done. I started by marking out my level lines again, one for the trim and one for the tile. I didn't show this earlier, but I attached the trim with a staple gun and another piece of wood to keep everything level. Once that was good, I started installing the tile. It felt so much easier now that I kind of knew what I was doing at this point. I added this little strip because I wanted it to look like they went all the way down behind the oven. Then it was time to get the grout in. Again, I gave it a good wipe down with a slightly damp sponge and a clean dry rag for any leftover dust. From there, it was just waterproofing those grout lines and one last final bead of caulk to finish it off. Okay, the backsplash is officially done.
I'm finished.
I just put the floating shelves back up, but I'm actually having some new ones fabricated. When we first redid the kitchen, I was trying to save money where we could, so I made these out of some 2x12s, but they've kind of warped over the years, so they need to be replaced. They aren't ready yet, unfortunately, so I'm just going to use these for now because I want to clear off the dining room table of all that stuff, but I also want to finish this video. So I'm going to put everything back in its spot, and then we can take a look. Damn, dog. That was a lot. I kept putting this project off because honestly, I was a little intimidated by the whole thing. But now I feel like I could totally do this again, no problem, so that's cool. You just gotta try new stuff, you know? One thing I didn't know is how dry my hands were gonna get from all the mortar and grout. They literally felt like sandpaper for like 3 days. Either way, I'm glad it's done. I'm really happy with how it turned out, and our kitchen finally feels like a finished space. If you have any questions, you can ask away in the comments, or if you want to let me know what you think, you can also tell me there. I would love if you liked this video, if you were feeling it, and if you want to subscribe, I would definitely love if you did that too. If you're still watching at this point, I appreciate you, and yeah, I'll see you soon. Bye. Do you hear my hands? They're like still kind of dry.